Hit record. All right, so the plan for tonight is we are going to talk about stress, and we're going to talk about stress from a couple of different perspectives. But really, the main thing that we're going to talk about is a concept called grip versus gravity, and I think it'll be kind of a concept that you guys enjoy. So, when I talk about stress, most people immediately think of the idea of I'm stressed out, right? They think that, man, I got a deadline I have to meet. I have a 10-foot putt to make the cut. I'm on quarantine, right? It's stressful. The issue, though, and where people get confused is that is a stressor, right? So a pressure putt, a presentation, a homework assignment, a deadline, those are what we call stressors. Those are things that cause you stress. Stress itself is simply a response. It's a physiologic response to something happening. Now, stress, the actual physiologic response, is what we term non-valient. So it's not determining if it's good or bad, right? That ultimately falls on us to interpret that stress response and sort of react accordingly. So what it ultimately comes down to, and it's the idea of the fight or flight response, is it's a survival instinct. And a lot of times when people hear fight or flight, it's, well, I have a choice to either fight or run, and one is good and one is bad. But the reality is no, they are equal. You just have to make a sort of informed decision about what is the best option in this particular point in time. But the fight or flight response, when you feel that arousal, when you feel that sort of adrenaline pump, that's a stressful response. That is stress that you are experiencing. It's not good, not bad. Same thing like when you're working out, you are experiencing stress on the body. Fundamentally, it's not good or bad. It is pushing you in one way or the other. Make sense? Okay. So the reason I wanted to start with that is we then move into this concept of general adaptation. So we as humans are really, really good at adapting to kind of uncomfortable situations. And so as it pertains to stress, within this sort of theory of general adaptation, first thing we experience is an alarm, right? We get this alarm signal that, hey, something's amiss here, right? And it could be, hey, I have a big tournament coming up in a day. It could be, hey, I'm going out on a date with a girl that I really, really think is attractive. All of those create this sort of alarm in our body that says, hey, something's amiss here. And so it starts up all of that physiologic processing. Over time, if we continue to have that stress response, what ends up happening is we develop what's known as resistance. That's adaptation, right? So we get really, really comfortable if we do the same thing over and over again. Joe is a perfect example of this, right? If he gave you the same exercise for a month and you didn't change the weight, you didn't change the reps, you didn't change anything about it, what's going to happen after a period of time is your body's going to say, well, this is easy, right? I'm not getting the same benefit from that exercise that I did when I did it the first day. My body is adapting to that. Now, the last piece of that general adaptation is what we term exhaustion. Prolonged stress, so prolonging anything, especially stress, is bad. So if we had you lifting 500 pounds in a deadlift every single day, after a period of time, your body's going to break down. You're going to burn out, you're going to break down, and your body's not going to be able to adapt. Your body's not going to be able to manage. And that's where you have some of those negative consequences of stress. You see it in school, you see it in golf, performance, all of that fun stuff. Making sense so far? Okay. So how do we stay more in the, I guess, adaptation phase and less in the sort of exhaustion phase? We move into the idea of coping strategies. So emotion-focused and problem-focused coping. Those are the two main styles of coping that you're going to see when dealing with stress. Now, emotion-focused coping deals with the feelings that you are experiencing. So This is going to be, hey, you know what? I'm feeling really uncomfortable. I'm feeling really kind of negative in my headspace. What am I going to do? I'm going to meditate, right? I'm going to be mindful. I'm going to do these things. The bad part about emotion-focused coping is a lot of people take it kind of the wrong direction. What has been sort of the cliche during quarantine? Well, people are getting really good at drinking, doing drugs, doing all of these things, right? Because they're trying to address the emotions that they are experiencing during this time. So, yes, emotion-focused coping has a place, it has a time. Usually that time is when you are in a place of little control. So let's say you had a death in a family. Let's say you unexpectedly lost your job. Those are things that you cannot prepare for. Those are things that you are not able to simply solve with sort of a flick of a switch. So you have to manage the emotional piece before you can do anything else. Now, on the flip side of that is problem-focused coping. Now, problem-focused coping is really finding solutions. So, hey, you know what? I'm struggling with my putting, for example. I can't make a putt inside 3 feet. That's a problem. How can I address that? Well, maybe I need to work on my alignment. Maybe I need to work on my grip. Whatever it might be, you are fundamentally addressing the problem instead of the emotional aspect of it. Where we said that emotion-focused coping is really good in things that you have very little control over, problem-focused coping is better for things that you have lots of control over, right? Because you actually can pick and choose and say, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to adjust this, I'm going to make changes here, and you can actually change the stress that you're experiencing as a result of that. So all of that leads into sort of the concept of grip versus gravity. And so I want to ask you guys, when I say grip versus gravity, what do you guys think? So let's start with grip. What do you think grip pertains to?
I guess I don't know, kind of like your grip on life or something like that.
Okay.
Like how well you're handling everything.
Okay.
Like trying to take control of something.
Okay. So control of something. Okay. Joe, Ash, you want to chime in?
Yeah, just taking control, how you handle a situation, how do you go hands-on on a situation?
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Perfect. Yeah, so grip is definitely a control piece, right? It's the idea that I can hold on to something physically, right? And so as it pertains to sort of the stress piece, it's something that I actually have control over. What about gravity?
Just letting it happen naturally.
Okay, letting things happen naturally. Alex?
Yeah, I guess just letting things happen. That's really what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so you're on the right track. It is the idea of less control, right? Kind of letting things happen. But think about this for a second. What happens if you throw a golf ball in the air? It naturally starts coming back to earth. But while it's coming back to earth, you have control over when you choose to grab that golf ball, right? You have choice over if you're going to let it fall low, if you're going to catch it high. So gravity is the idea of, hey, things are going to kind of be somewhat out of my control, but I do still have some choice in this matter. I do still have some control in this matter. And so where this comes into play is this idea of a worry stopper grid. So if you guys have a piece of paper, if you want to just kind of conceptualize this, you're going to have 4 quadrants. So top left quadrant is going to be grip. Top right quadrant is going to be gravity. And then you're going to have important and not important. So top left, grip, important. Bottom left, grip, not important. Top right, gravity, important. Bottom right, gravity, not important. Now, the reason we sort of separate these is when we think about the things that stress us out, when we think about the things that worry us or bother us, we can now start to place them into these different boxes. We can start to place them into these different quadrants. Now, within each quadrant, there are sort of best practices, if you will, in terms of how you're going to handle them or how you're going to approach them. So within the grip important side, that's going to be an action phase. That's going to be a time where, okay, I can act on this stressor. I can do something because I have control over it and I deem it important. Now, the grip side, not important, that's going to be elimination, right? This is going to be something that's really not important to me and I have control over it. So I can choose to remove it from my life or from this situation. Top right, gravity, important, acceptance, and then action, right? Because there is some level of acceptance when it is out of our control. That being said, as we said with the golf ball or the baseball, as it's coming down, we have choice in terms of when to grab it. We have choice in terms of when to move it. And then the last one is not important gravity. It's integration and then action, right? So it's not really important. So we have to find a way to kind of integrate it. But we also understand that it's kind of out of our control, and then we choose to act on those pieces. So what I want you guys to do next is I want you guys to go around. We'll go around each of us. And I want you guys to think of one or two stressors that are currently stressing you out, right? And again, the stressor is the thing that is causing a physiologic response, not I'm physiologically stressed out. And then think about where it fits into that worry grid and how you can maybe make an adjustment to improve your stressor, okay? So I'm gonna go first to kind of give you guys an example of what's going on. So one thing that's really been causing me stress and discomfort ever since the quarantine is, well, everything's locked down, especially in the sports world, right? Where do I get most of my business? Athletes, sports, all of that. So it's really difficult to find ways to interact with clients. It's finding ways to build business, all of that fun stuff. So for me, I have to put that in gravity important. That's something that's really, really important to me. I want my business to grow. I want my business to expand. But in the same respect, I'm also not running this show. I don't get to choose when things open or when things close. And so first, I have to have some level of acceptance and understand I can't do anything here as it pertains to opening and closing. But what I can do is I can make specific actions to try and make myself more available electronically, things like this. I can try and find ways to, reach out to local community members, do things for them as a way of potentially expanding things once things open up. Make sense? All right, so we'll just go kind of top down. So Ash, I see you in the top, so why don't you go next?
So I would say grip important. I just have one class that I've been procrastinating in a lot. We have a lot of assignments coming up, so just recognizing that and then just a matter of getting started.
Okay.
Slowly getting started and then picking up as I go. And then I would say the gravity, kind of dealing with quarantine. I don't have control over golf as much. As far as, I guess, the stressors, like I'm anxious, not just to get back and go play again, but like I'm looking forward to all the summer tournaments coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously a lot of them are going to be canceled. So I guess there I don't have as much control, but I could still, practice, mental game with you guys and read books and do like I was telling you, I got a net that I could hit balls into, so still prepare.
Totally, exactly, right? Some level of acceptance where it's like, hey, I can't change the situation, but I still can act to try and improve my game, improve my mentality, things along those lines. Excellent. What about you, Joe?
So for me, my two would be money and the future. But I'm not going to lie, I'm mad lost with the whole quadrant thing. So not really. Let's work through this, shall we?
Okay. So think about this. So grip and important. That's going to be something that I have control over, and I deem important. So that's going to be something that I can choose to act on immediately, right? I don't have to wait and have some level of acceptance. So for you, money at this point, that's probably not going to be entirely within your control. That's not going to be something that you can completely act on. Right? There are other factors that are out of your control. So that would probably fall more in the gravity piece, because first you have to accept, hey, my business is currently different, or my business is changing. But with that being said, how can I adapt? How can I adjust? How can I change to still try and make progress, right? So you going on Zoom, you offering online training, things like that. That's how you can act to try and reduce some of the stress that you're experiencing as a result of money concerns, right?
Sure, sure. And then also money too, like savings, right? Like understanding that I have savings and hey, you know what? This is probably relatively short term right here. So, I can always kind of go back to that,
Totally.
which kind of eases my mind.
Definitely. Right. And for some, right, there's like family concerns, right? And
Right.
it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. Like I've talked to some people who are like, yeah, like I'm like, I have siblings who are pains in my asses, and they're saying, oh, we need to see our parents, or we don't need to see our parents. And so for them, they're like, this is something I have control over, and I don't think it's important. So I'm going to just remove this from my life because
I
I
see.
don't want to have to deal with this stressor, right? So things like that.
Okay.
All right, Alex?
All right. I can't really tell whether this is gravity important or not important, but I think it's gravity important. I'm playing with some really good players tomorrow and stuff like that, that played on the PGA Tour and stuff like that. And so I guess it would be acceptance then action, right? So the players that I'm playing against don't really mean anything. So I can't tell whether that's not important or important. Like I really want to play well,
Mhm.
but what they think or what they see doesn't matter who I play against. So
And what you'll see with some of this stuff is there's a lot of kind of gray area, and a lot of it falls on you to determine what's important, what's not important, right? I could tell you, hey, you know what? That really doesn't matter their opinion or their perspective because they have no bearing on your future. But you may really deem their sort of approval, or you may deem their sort of insight incredibly valuable. And so, yeah, like for you, that may be something that you're like, I have to accept that I may or may not be prepared for it, but what can I also do to give myself the best chance to perform? Or you say, all right, how can I integrate just a different way of approaching it and do something different and act, in my normal manner out there, right? What about you, Derek?
So one thing that has kind of been giving me stress for a little bit of time now is I started kind of like thinking about, oh, like I'm obviously going to work this summer, but where do I want to work and where can I work? And this was obviously before a lot of the quarantine stuff kind of shut down everything. But I had like a whole job thing lined up at Castlewood with Brett, and I was hoping to get like a paid internship with him. So I was really looking forward to that, preparing for that. And now that you can't, so I found out today that they're opening the club again like next week, but there's no way they're going to be able to hire new people until like June or whenever the shelter in place is gone, because they can't even hire their full-time staff that was already there before. They can't even afford that now. So I've been and I was supposed to start either last week or this upcoming week, just depending on how it worked out. But I was expecting to kind of like start learning about, like, I deemed it as important, so I would put it under like gravity important, because I felt it was like a stepping stone for me on my way to like learning more about if I want to do this as a career, stuff like that, and like kind of learning more about how like Brett runs and everything and all that. So I can't do that now, so I kind of just have to like accept it. But and the way I'm kind of like taking action is something that obviously comes with that is making money, and I know you just kind of touched on money, but I've been finding kind of other ways to do it. Like my parents um need a lot of stuff done around the house now that and like the yard now that like obviously we can't have like gardeners or stuff come anymore, and we have a big yard, so they're like, I'll pay you, I don't know, $20 or whatever to go, I don't know, cut down these branches in the yard and rake all these leaves up and take it to the dump. So I've been doing that and just kind of, I guess, making money that way too, which is nice. But
the
I'm
spending
still
cash
at this,
reserve.
yeah, but at the same time, still like, I'm not just giving up on like that whole job that I had lined up. I'm still doing stuff to like research like what it takes to have that job, and what are the qualifications and what do I have to do in order to do that in the future and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So it hasn't like completely left my mind.
Good. So, this is something that you can conceptualize when you feel stressed or when you have stressors in your life, right? You can sort of start to categorize them and say, all right, where do they sort of fall within these quadrants? And for you, it's a way to basically kind of focus your attention and say, all right, what are the things that I can act on? What are the things that I can't act on? Because I think that a lot of times when we think about certain stressors, we feel like, man, there's nothing we can do about it. Like we have no sort of path, we have no sort of action. But in reality, even the things that feel out of our control, there is some level of control that you do have on it. And so trying to take a little bit more control over those things that feel out of our control, right? Even like the sort of stereotypical one, like, hey, results are completely out of our control. And yeah, that is true to some degree. But if you play really, really well, you're giving yourself a much better chance, right? If you're mentally strong, you're giving yourself a better chance. Whereas if you show up hungover, mentally out of it, you're giving yourself a worse chance. So things like that. Does that kind of make sense? All right. We still got, some time. So that was what I had prepared. What questions do you guys have for me on this or anything else that's kind of come up in the past week or so?
So it's not really a question. It's more of just like kind of like a comment and something that I was able to kind of like understand last week. I was walking around with my wife and, I was talking about something that I didn't have control over, right? And just like, and I do it all the time. And then as I was talking about it, I was like, I was able to tell myself, and I literally said it out loud. I was like, well, I actually don't have any control of that, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because it was just like, boom, just like hard cut off. And I was like, well, that was easy. And so like, just for me, like that's big time, because I go through just all these different scenarios about business and what to do next and this and that. And a lot of the time I have no control over this stuff. I'm just buzzing in my head. So like, I thought it was a really big step for me to just be like, well, actually, like, I don't have control over that. I'm going to go ahead and just stop thinking about it right now because I am literally just wasting time, wasting energy, my mental bandwidth on this stuff. And it was interesting because it was so relieving, right? I was like, all right, great. I got to worry about that anymore. Like, actually, what can I focus on now that I do have control over? And typically those are the important things. So that was really cool. That was big time.
I like it.
One thing I actually learned from the sports psychologist that he uses or whatever, he basically said like that you don't have control over like what you shoot, if that makes sense, but you have control over the things like we were talking about uncontrollables and controllables. And he said, like, think about it as like the stock market, right? Like you can invest in the stock market, but you don't truly know whether it's going to go up or down. But you can put your best like opinion or not opinion, but your best investment in the company that you think is gonna basically be good. So he
Completely.
said the only way you don't use that is, think about it like, don't think about it as if the stock is way up, then it's going to come back down. But yeah, so that's
No,
what.
that's a really interesting point, and I have a couple of friends of mine who are professional gamblers, and for them, it's really really interesting talking to them about sort of odds because for them, it's I want to get my money in when I have the best chance possible to win. Now, it doesn't guarantee that I'm going to win that money, but it's all about a mathematical probability. And I sort of think about that with golf to some degree, where it's like you're not trying to go out and shoot the lowest score possible. You're trying to put yourself in position to shoot the lowest score possible, right? If you put it in the trees, yeah, you can still hit a heroic shot and make a low number, but you're also trying to make sure that you get your money in at the right times because over time that's going to be what sustains you as opposed to all right, I got lucky or I really managed to hit a good card at the right time and I probably shouldn't have won that hand, but all those little things go a really long way. So I think that that's a really interesting point that you bring up there, Alex.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of what professional gamblers do well is like a lot of the times when they have stuff that's unknown, like say what the cards are on the table, right? Like they end up losing money at first, but in the end, because of their knowledge and because of like the knowledge of the cards on the table and stuff like that, that they will end up gaining money in the end. So it's kind of like just that growth mentality of just understanding that basically even in bad times you're really learning more so that you can become better.
Well, there's that, and that also brings me to I've had some conversations with like day traders, and so the issue with day traders is usually they will have a strategy that they adhere to, right? When to buy, when to sell, all of these things. I'm not going to get into it because I don't understand it to the level that they do. But what I found fascinating in talking to them is there are times where they will go against the plan that they've set in place for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's going to be stress. Sometimes it's going to be, hey, I'm trying to catch up because I made a bad deal earlier, a number of things. And one of the keys from a mental performance for them is I have to stick to my game plan, right? It's so hard sometimes when you've just lost bet after bet after bet after bet after bet after bet. Even though you got your money in at the right time, you're like, well, crap, like, do I need to change my strategy? But then if you change your strategy, now you're really confused because now you're no longer playing the deck that you understand, right? You're no longer playing the numbers that you know. Now you're just winging it. And that's the worst thing that you can do. And, I think sometimes for high performers, that's where we get into trouble is we start trying to wing it because we're like, well, things aren't going the way that I planned. Well, yeah, that's how it works sometimes. And you have to kind of stick to the game plan and see it through and hope that it's going to work out. But when you start throwing things against the wall and hoping that they're going to stick, then it just sort of exacerbates the issue.
Well, that was one of the things that Alex talked about last week was like, yo, have that structure, have that plan, know what you're going to be doing the next day, and that'll bring you a long way.
Totally.
Focus keeps you focused on path.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts, questions? All right. So I'll go